Welcome, folks. Today we're going to get into a very interesting and quite a serious subject, talking about private asset management, and in particular, the private asset management system that we'll be offering. This is Mark Emery with the Lighthouse Law Club, and this is, in fact, your safe alternative to banking. And we'll get into why you need to be looking at alternatives in the banking industry. All right, this is brought to you in conjunction with Monaco Management Group, an international financial services consulting firm, and of course the Lighthouse Law Club. You'll see more about that in just a minute. First, let's look at today's predators, who are extremely voracious. We need to understand exactly why what we're doing with the private asset management system is so desperately needed, and the needs that it will fill in your business and financial lives, okay? But the predators of today, first of all, we know that all governments are bankrupt, right? And as they are bankrupt, they are becoming increasingly aggressive with their taxation schemes. In fact, for example, the state of Oregon has a lot of bicycles. Bicycling is very popular. Almost everyone has a bicycle in Oregon. And of course, the government is bankrupt there like everywhere else. That being the case, the legislators came up with this great idea. Hey, there's so many bicycles, let's just tax bicycles. Now, not only do you need a permit to use the bicycle, but now they're putting a tax on the just virtually owning the bicycle. So the question is, what's next? If they can impose a tax for simply owning something, what's next? So we see all types of unconscionable tax collection activities. Americans have to deal with the criminal rogue mafia IRS. The UK has to deal with the Inland Revenue. And all tax collection agencies are heartless and to a large degree completely lawless. They operate outside the law. So I think we understand that. Don't even get me started on that subject. We have to deal with overreaching lawsuits. You know, these days when a woman can order a cup of coffee and sue the vendor because it was too hot and she spilled it on herself and hurt herself and win millions of dollars, you know, we're in trouble. Anyone with deep pockets is running a huge risk in this litigious society. You know all about that. That leads us to overzealous prosecutors. Today, the prosecutors aren't interested in seeking justice. They aren't interested in punishing criminals. They're interested in tallying points on the leaderboard in their office as to how many prosecutions they can get for the month, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of whether someone is innocent or not. Your innocence has nothing to do with the case that you might be involved in. And I could give you a long list of proofs and examples of that. I see it almost every day. So it's business as usual in the court system. The court system, again, isn't about seeking justice. The court system is about generating business for the system, the government. The attorneys are the lackeys for the government. You will never find an attorney to really help you out if it's a case of you versus the government. People are starting to realize now that every time a case number is generated, that creates a bond which the government can float in the market and make millions. So simply by bringing you into court, they can make tons of money. It's business, folks. It's business. Don't think, well, I run a clean lifestyle, I'm quiet, I mind my own business, I'm never going to have any problems. It's not about you having problems or not. It's more about you having something that they want or not. And of course, on top of all that is just the simple matter of controlling the populace and demanding submission. All right? I think you understand that. We're dealing increasingly with warrantless searches, police aren't acting on probable cause or even reasonable suspicion or a single articulable fact that leads them to believe that any kind of crime has been committed, they're looking for any way to put their hooks into you. They're not searching for evidence, they're searching for a link so they can bring you out, put the handcuffs on you, impound your car, and create a case number. Okay? It's business. Again, it's business. That leads us directly to asset seizure and forfeiture. I'm very sad to see the current U.S. Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, doubling down on asset seizure and forfeiture. Oh, it sounds great. We can seize the means by which the criminals do their business and put them out of business. No, that's the cover story. The reality is they're out seizing property using this, asset seizure and forfeiture laws, as the excuse to pad their budgets, to give them the resources, to buy the equipment, the personnel, the technology, the software, to oppress us even more. Enough said on that. We'll be talking about bank bail-ins and client haircuts in just a minute. But this is becoming increasingly a method of stealing money from people. Capital controls. Just within the last few years, I've heard cases of major national banks in the United States denying their clients the facility to do an international wire transfer. Well, what do you need that for? Why would you need to send money overseas? If you can't use your money the way you like, you're subject to capital controls. There's also been many cases where high net worth clients have had large accounts, and the balance shows it's in the bank, but the banker will not give them access to it. No withdrawals, no transfers. Basically, it's frozen. Oh yeah, it's yours. You know, the money's there, don't worry. You just can't use it. Can't take it out. That's a serious concern. And of course, we all know about the unrestrained surveillance and data connection of the NSA. And of course, we all understand about the unrestrained surveillance and data collection by the NSA and other agencies. Criminal suspicion is no longer necessary. Everybody's under surveillance. And so whenever you become a target, guess what? They go back into the files, they'll pull something out, use it against you, and voila, your goose is cooked. And don't forget about the suspicious activity reports that the friendly girl behind the counter of your local bank branch will fill out. If you decide you want to buy a used car, the seller wants cash, and you ask for $4,000 in cash in the withdrawal. That's suspicious activity. And many other profiles. They're filing suspicious activity reports on anybody, whether it's suspicious or not, because if they get caught not filing a suspicious activity report, they get penalized. So the tendency is to err on the side of overkill. All right? So we also have FATCA, the Financial Account Tax Compliance Act, whereby the Federal Reserve and the United States officials have basically bullied the banks worldwide to be spies on their American clients in the foreign banks, force these American clients to fill out IRS forms when opening a foreign bank account. So the foreign banks become unpaid administrators for the IRS, which is a huge burden if they want to continue using their correspondent banks in New York or in the United States. If they want to use the US dollar, that's what they have to do. Now, the way around this for some banks is to simply deny offering services to Americans with U.S. passports. That's a simple solution. They just don't accept Americans anymore as clients. So your freedoms to deal in the international arena are extremely restricted, controlled, and monitored. That's FATCA. And of course, once those suspicious activity reports go in, you now have a trial with FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Isn't that nice? So all of a sudden, you've pulled out a little cash out of your account, suspicious activity report goes in, FinCEN has a profile on you, and guess what? You're subject to more surveillance and monitoring to check out your activities. And where will that lead? Folks, this is a dangerous world that we live in. If you're living exposed, you're out in the open, you're doing business as normal. Normal is not normal anymore. The world is no longer normal. Therefore, we've got to act accordingly. Let's move on. Let's talk about bank bail-ins. All right? Taxpayers have gotten quite upset over the constant bailouts of companies, in particular banks, that are too big to fail. So where does that lead us? The bank executives have a free pass to go into the derivatives casino and throw all the bad bets they want because they don't have to be responsible anymore because they'll get a bailout. So now some governments have enacted legislation saying, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore, but we will give you legislation that will allow you to cover for your bad decisions and mistakes and losses by taking from your depositors. Let's read the excerpt from this article, The Bail-In, How You and Your Money Will Be Parted During the Next Banking Crisis. This was in January 2015. And it's just getting worse today. There will be no more taxpayer bailouts for the big Wall Street banks. That much has been established by the lobbied-to-death Dodd-Frank banking reform. Yeah, right, bill. However, instead of taking money from the government, i.e. taxpayers, the principle has been established that the next source of money for profligate banks will be your deposit accounts. Yeah, that's right. The money to stabilize the banking sector during the next crisis will come out of your savings and checking accounts. Well, isn't that nice? Kind of gives you the warm fuzzies, doesn't it, to know that these bankers can dip into your account to cover for their mistakes and bad management? Isn't that nice? Kind of a feel-good story, isn't it? Here's an article in Zero Hedge. New laws that allow the government to seize savings deposits during a crisis. And this excerpt says, behind the veneer of all is well being promoted by both world governments and the mainstream media, the political elite have begun implementing legislation that will permit them to freeze accounts and use your savings to prop up insolvent banks. Now, if that doesn't set off alarm bells in your head, I don't know what will. All right? It's in your face. The banks are charging you for them to use your money, which is completely upside down and inside out. And then they're going to charge you even more to cover for their mistakes if they go insolvent. Who's on the hook there? Where's the benefit? What's the real benefit here? Risk versus reward. I'm having a hard time seeing it. Let's look at a U.S. News article. The headline, Is Your Money Safe in a Too Big to Fail Bank? And here's a short excerpt I've taken out of the article, talking about the derivatives bubble and the risk that's inherent in the entire banking system on that. Quote, unfortunately, the combined wealth of shareholders and bondholders probably won't be enough to cover a major meltdown. The next crisis, when it occurs, is likely to be due to the derivatives trade, and the amount of derivatives in play are staggering. The exposure in derivatives at the too-big-to-fail banks exceeds the total world's gross domestic product. That is staggering. A derivatives-led meltdown could quickly overwhelm the funds available from banks, stock, and bondholders. So who's next in line to pay? According to Brown, who's a banking expert they're quoting here in this article, the depositors are next in line to get wiped out, and they'll get tapped before another government-funded bailout is approved by Congress. Brown argues that depositing your money in a bank is essentially the same as lending money to the bank, as if, say, you bought one of the bank's bonds instead of opening a checking account. Intuitively, you may think that when you deposit money in a bank, it's yours, and the bank has to give it back to you on demand. But that's not completely true. It's legally the bank's money now, says Brown. The bank only has to give it back to the extent that it has money left to give after settling up with parties who have a higher priority than the depositors, i.e. you. So what are they saying here? They're saying that when you deposit money into the bank, it's not necessarily your money anymore. They'll give it back to you if they find it convenient and feasible. But they have no obligation to put you ahead of other financial priorities that the bank might have. Another feel-good, fuzzy story, right? You may already be aware of this, but it's important that we drive this point home so people have a clear vision. So you say, well, that's probably not going to happen. The banks are, the industry's in good shape. Let's take a look at the trend in banking. You can just do a simple web search, banking collapse, failed banks, similar terms like that. And here's a few of the articles that pop up. America's banking crisis, a financial tsunami approaching, is the headline. The intensifying American banking crisis threatens the stability of its economy and the world's. Where is it leading? Global financial stability has been shaken. Another headline, a major banking collapse looks imminent. The article starts out, this surprises almost everyone. You don't own the money in your bank account. Once you deposit money at the bank, it's no longer yours. Another article on this very subject. The banking crisis, why it will happen again. Examining the fundamentals of a sick industry and explaining why another crisis is coming up. In the first line in the article says, banks are always at the center of large-scale economic bubbles and crisis. This is not by chance or induced by some shock, but by design. And we go down to the bottom, look at EU set for catastrophic 2017, fresh European banking crisis. Europe could suffer another catastrophic banking catastrophe on a par with the 2008 financial crisis, a top analyst has warned. And these articles go on and on and on. And you can find video presentations and clips all over YouTube on this subject. So this is the trend in banking. You need to be aware. Banks are not the place to hold any large amounts of assets other than perhaps a pass-through account to clear your monthly bills and bill paying. All right? Infowars.com. Economic collapse is erupting all over the planet as global leaders begin to panic. This was just last year. The subheading, there's absolutely no reason to be optimistic about the direction of the global economy right now. I highly recommend Alex Jones and the Infowars.com website. They've got all kinds of video clips on YouTube for the moment until they get censored and taken off of there because they hit too close to home. Alex does get on my nerves once in a while, but honestly, I really love this guy. Not only his passion, but he is dead on. He is clued in to what's going on in the world, politically, economically, dealing with the globalists. And if you want to know what's going on, and have some vision of what's to come, go to Infowars.com. All right, so that's the trend in the banking industry. Let's look at the trend in U.S. dollar-denominated assets. All right, you've seen this chart before. It's the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. And you can clearly see that if we use the creation date of the Federal Reserve as our benchmark to take a look at history since that time, that today your dollar will buy roughly about 4 cents worth of goods compared to what it did back in 1913 before the Fed was created. Now this chart's quite interesting to take a look at. Look at what happened to the purchasing power of the dollar in the first 8 years after the Fed was created. The Fed was created, the purchasing power of your dollar dropped by 50% in just a few years. What does that tell us? This is what happens when you deal with fiat currency, when they can just print it into existence, or today simply create digits in a computer and release those into the market. When you flood the market with something of unlimited supply, its value decreases. The price decreases. That's basic economics. So that's a telltale sign as to the value that the Federal Reserve banking system holds for society. Right there, the first few years that it was created, the purchasing power of your dollar dropped 50%. And then ever since FDR took the gold backing out from behind the dollar and made it no longer redeemable in anything of substance, you can see a constant and continual decline in the value of the dollar since that time. Just to put things in perspective, if we're only purchasing 4 cents worth of goods compared to what they could buy back in 1913, that would be the equivalent of saying if your household needs $100,000 of income to take care of everything, just for conversation, pick a nice round number, that in 1913 you could live exactly the same way you are right now on only $4,000 a year. Think of that. That's about $375 a month. Is that sinking in? That's dramatic, very dramatic. So that's the trend in U.S. dollar-denominated assets, and likely you've got your savings, your investments, your IRA, your real estate, your holdings, investment accounts, Merrill Lynch, all in dollar-denominated assets. If you're like most people, am I right? This is what you're looking at. Let's take a look at alternative assets by comparison. Alternative assets could very easily be precious metals, gold, silver, platinum. Could very easily be, in today's world, cryptocurrencies are becoming an increasingly popular store of value, true value, that can't be created out of thin air, can't be printed into existence, can't be digitized into existence simply at the press of a button. People are recognizing them as a store of value. So let's take a look at this. Alternative assets typically appreciate rather than consistently depreciate. That's a nice switch, isn't it? Alternative assets are not monitored or controlled by a central authority. Can you spell freedom? Alternative assets are able to be held or stored in a physical location. Even digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, can be downloaded off the computer, held in a hardware wallet, and put in your pocket. Alternative assets are much less likely to be tracked, seized, liened, or garnished. Alternative assets are almost never subject to taxation and are a truer representation of a real free market, where the market decides the prices. The players in the market decide the prices. not subject to high levels of government manipulation through regulation and capital infusion. So, I saw a video just last week. The essence of it was that somehow, someone dumped 50 million ounces of silver onto the market with a short. Someone sold 50 million ounces of silver. Now, the point of that video was to say that since 9/11, there are controls in the market that the markets will be shut down if there's too much volume, creating too much volatility. All right, it's a safety valve. If there's some huge shock in the marketplace and there's too much volume going on, they shut it down, let things calm down before they reopen. All right? So dumping 50 million ounces of silver onto the market could not happen without the blessing of government regulators. That's interesting. The other thing that was brought out in the video is that 50 million ounces of silver simply don't exist. That much silver does not exist in the marketplace. So, in short, what's that telling you? That's telling you that the government, someone in the government, or someone with the approval of the government is manipulating the market. Gold prices have been suppressed for a long time. We'll talk about that in a minute. So alternative assets are more easily carried or transferred across borders privately. And you understand what private means. So let's look at the trend now in one form of alternative assets, and that is cryptocurrencies. This is a chart of Bitcoin, the leader in the cryptocurrency space. And now there are nearly 1,000 different cryptocurrencies coming out onto the market, being used for similar and or different purposes. And it's just an absolutely fascinating industry to start to understand. All right, but look at this growth curve. It's kind of like a jet fighter taking off, right? It's on the runway, is going, gaining momentum, gaining velocity. Finally, it gets lift under the wings, and you can see how it just shoots up to the sky. All right, people are only now just beginning to realize the benefits and the potential of cryptocurrencies as a store of value. The crypto space has only scratched the surface. It's going much, much higher. The percentage of people involved is minute, and the people who even understand or know about cryptocurrencies is very, very small. So we're still at the very early stages of this industry. Make a note of that. Here's the trend in gold since 2001. And you can see how the trend has been continually up, going up almost 400% in about 8 years from 2002 to 2010. And has kind of been pushed down and leveled off a little bit. I just talked about manipulation in the silver market. Same thing in the gold market. And you ask, well, why would they want to keep gold prices low? Very simple. To cover the failure of the fiat currency system that the Federal Reserve is operating with the U.S. Federal Reserve notes. Debt-based debt never gets redeemable. All right? If gold were allowed to float freely in the marketplace, consider this. China is buying gold by the ton, as fast as they can get their hands on it. Countries around the world, investors around the world, savers around the world have been buying gold hot and heavy for a number of years. Why isn't the price continually rising? Because if the true value of gold were to be revealed, some experts estimate it should be in the $5,000 range right now. that if the true value were to be revealed, it would show the weakness of the U.S. dollar. Does that make sense? Okay, there you go, right there. That's why gold is manipulated. Here's an interesting aspect about one way to deal with gold is private gold certificates, whereby the gold bars or the gold coins can be specifically allocated and held in a fully insured and bonded warehouse. All right, then that warehouse issues a certificate saying, yes, these particular coins, this set of coins, this numbered bar is allocated to so-and-so, and this certificate represents ownership. Very simple. Now, what's interesting about that is that these certificates are denominated not in dollar value because the price is always fluctuating, right? It's denominated in weight. The certificate represents that. So the certificate is denominated in weight and not dollar value, which means it's a warehouse receipt and not a security. Well, what does that mean? That means it's not reportable, and it is negotiable. You can endorse the back of this, and it becomes virtually a bearer instrument. Interesting, huh? Okay, that's just one little tidbit on gold I thought I'd throw in there for you. Now, if you've got an investment portfolio, and you were going to log in, take a look, see how your portfolio is doing, which chart would you like to see representing your portfolio and the trends that it's on? The one on the top or the one on the bottom? My point here is it does not take a master's in business administration degree in finance and economics from the Wharton School of Business to understand what's going on here and to make a proper decision. This is not rocket science, folks. You do not need an advanced economics degree. Look at the chart and pick which portfolio would you rather be working with. All right? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? All right, now let's look at the private asset management system. We'll call it the PAM. All right, and this is brought to us by Monaco Management Group. What is the PAM system? First of all, it's a system whereby you would set up private trust accounts. All accounts are held in trust. All assets are held in trust. Those assets may be held internationally, which provides additional security for those that have a global vision and understand a little bit about the risks of operating entirely within one single jurisdiction. All right? That's a positive factor. The PAM will enable people to hold multiple asset classes, different metals, multi-currencies, multi-currency account in fiat currencies, multi-currency account in cryptocurrencies, multiple forms of precious metals. There will be fund opportunities, investment opportunities offered by third parties that we may take advantage of through the PAM system. So the PAM system is designed for long-term wealth building an estate, a nest egg, doing some estate planning for the family, for the business, and it also provides short-term liquidity and access to certain parts of the portfolio for business management, if that's something that is needed. So those are some of the general parameters, and we can continue. First of all, private in this case means private. I shouldn't have to elaborate on that, and so I won't. It is fully secure with multiple layers of security, with various checks and balances. There is transparency with full legal recourse available, and it is recognized by the World Bank as a type of non-bank financial institution. The World Bank recognizes non-bank financial institutions as financial services that are provided which banks do not provide. So non-bank financial institutions round out the services not provided by banks, and they see that as a very positive development in the financial services industry, serving the local community by filling needs that the banks do not fill. Okay? So it fits right into the financial landscape globally. And when we're dealing with trusts, you know very well that trust assets are non-reportable on your personal balance sheet. Why? Because they're not yours. The secret to asset protection is very simple. Don't own anything. If you don't own it, your name isn't on it, it can't be taken from you by predators and attackers who want to attack you. Lawsuits, tax collectors, we can go on right down the list. They can't get their hands on it because it's not yours. So the PAM almost completely eliminates probate and estate taxes, taxes on the gains of appreciable assets. Let me back up just a second, talking about probate. If you've got any experience at all in probate, you know one thing. This is a criminal racket run by the Bar Association. Any estate that ends up in probate will be milked and milked and milked in probate for as long as the assets exist. And guess when the probate case ends? When there's no more assets to work with, because it's been taken in fees by the attorneys, the courts, the specialists, and everybody involved in the probate industry. It's a theft racket. Talk to someone who's been through it, and you'll find out. All right. The PAM almost completely eliminates reporting. You don't need to report assets that are not yours. You don't need to report assets that are someone else's in another jurisdiction. There's no reporting requirements. All right? The risks of any bank crisis or dollar collapse are completely eliminated. All those things we talked about earlier, bank bail-ins, trends in the banking industry, banking collapse, depreciation of the U.S. dollar, none of that will affect you. You'll be completely immune holding alternative assets in the PAM system. And of course, it completely eliminates business succession issues. If you were to structure a business or a portion of the business assets in the PAM, if you were to die, in most cases, most businesses are run by the owner. And again, in many cases, that can be a family business. And when that person dies, that basically destroys the business. It destroys the business because the assets have to be transferred, taxes have to be paid, fees have to be paid, and by the time all that's done, there's not enough left to run the business. So it collapses. When you don't have to worry about continuity or business succession when the principal passes away or one of the key principals passes away, you've got a much better chance with proper planning to keep that business alive and functioning for the benefit of the family or the people involved. Now, let's look at the online banking aspect of the PAM. There is account management software. You will log in online to get access to your account, which has military-grade security. It provides for a full audit trail, irreversible, cannot be tampered with, permanent audit trail for complete and instant accounting of every movement inside the system. Nobody can tamper with that without leaving a trail. This system is not available to the public. I need to say that. This is members only. It's a closed circle of individuals who will have access to it. This is not being offered as a service to the public. Okay? You need to be invited, and you need to be a part of the affinity group here, which is the Lighthouse Law Club. Now, once you log in, this is what you'll see. Here's a mock-up account. In the menu on the left, you're in the accounts section where you can take a quick review of what you have on account. In this case, you've got cash in US dollars, you've got cash in euro, you've got Bitcoin, you've got a certain amount of gold bullion, grams on hand, physical holdings, you've got grams of gold money, which is a program online you may be aware of. You may have a gold certificate for long-term storage and holding, wealth building. You've got OneCoin. You've got other cryptocurrencies. And you've got a debit card account. So as a business manager for this trust account, you may have expenses that need to be covered. You'll be able to log in here, move funds from your cash account over onto the debit card, and then access that anywhere in the world via a Visa card with very high limits, I might add. All right, now all messaging will be done internally. All messages stay on the server. They're done internally in the system. Therefore, there are no emails that ever go out in communication. This adds to security. You know how vulnerable emails are, right? People are reading your emails or have the ability to read your emails whenever they want. Okay? No emails in this system. To communicate with administration, all messages stay on the server. No emails. You can do internal transfers from one account to the other where those transfers are possible. Obviously, if you've got physical gold, you can't just transfer a couple ounces off of your 4-kilo bar and move that. That's not going to be possible. But for liquid accounts such as cash or one cryptocurrency converting to another cryptocurrency, that can be done in the transfers section. You'll have full detailed reports available, fully customizable by date, by type, by the level of activity, very robust reporting features. You'll have access to your profile as you do in all online accounts, and it's a very, very robust system. So that gives you a little bit of an idea how the accounts will be managed in the PAM system once you have one set up. So the question is, who can benefit? Well, business owners and entrepreneurs come to mind right off the bat. Busy professionals, successful people, corporate managers, managing any assets, of course, family business managers, and that would be to say any family that's trying to do any kind of estate planning, right? Basically, anybody with cash flow and assets and a future to protect. Now, you may say, well, I don't have a whole lot of assets right now that I would put into this. Well, then the follow-up question would be, would you like to have? This is a tool to help preserve what little bit you're able to put away and keep it safe from the predators that are out there that we talked about at the very beginning, right? That's pretty obvious. So this is our public introduction. And why do I say that? I say that because we've only just gotten started to introduce you to some of the concepts and some of the benefits, which, by the way, should be more than enough to make a very simple decision on how you want to incorporate this tool and this system into your business and financial life. But the point is that I haven't even gotten into the really juicy benefits. We have access through our correspondent business and banking relations and correspondent network. Monaco Management is a part of a global network of 400 or more financial services firms and companies, banks, and through that network, you can rest assured that just about any financial need that you may have can be addressed, and in many cases, addressed on an almost local basis, certainly dealing with the major metropolitan areas. All right, so your business may have some very specific needs that don't fit into the traditional banking model. I would venture to say that those needs can more than likely be met through our global network of affiliate financial services firms. And I won't say any more right now, but let's just leave it at that. Non-traditional needs that don't fit into the traditional banking model are something that you'll be amazed as to what the capacity might be to deal with certain issues. Once you're a member of the Law Club, you'll have access to full disclosure. I know you've got a lot of questions. We have many more details to share with you. explaining and drilling down into some of these issues, the transparency, the legal recourse, the functionality, how it works, what are the safeguards, what is the modus operandi, who are the people behind it, all these type of things will be available to members only, okay? And just understand that the best benefits that we haven't even talked about yet will blow your mind. But you don't need that because you've got enough already right here. Now, some people ask, well, why do I have to be part of the law club? I don't want to get involved in that. I just want to do this business. I want to get set up. I want to do this. I don't want to have to get involved in anything else. Well, you have to. This is the only road that you can take to access this. And there's an important reason for it, because through the law club, you'll get critical training and necessary information to be able to handle your freedom and future properly. And you can get it here and nowhere else. Okay? There are certain things you need to understand if you want to do this properly. Now, if you want to just jump right in, half-assed, half-cocked, mess it all up for yourself and probably everybody else, that's typically what happens. My dad used to have a saying, pardon my French here, but my dad always used to tell me that the public is full of two types of people. And he'd say, idiots and assholes. And I think we can all speak from experience that he was pretty dead on with that saying, right? So there's got to be a certain level of coaching, support, guidance, and training involved in how to do this properly, right? So that's why everyone goes through the law club, to have access to that information. And if you don't use it, that's on you, not anyone else. Secondly, for security, for privacy, for legal reasons, access to the PAM system is not available to the public. This is an affinity group operation working through a closed group of affiliated members who are in our limited society of informed individuals. Okay? The public is not informed. As a member of the Lighthouse Law Club, you will be properly informed. All right? With that, I just want to thank you for your time and attention. Get back to the person who introduced you to this presentation and get ready to take the next step. All right? Take care. God bless.